My date stood me up and publicly humiliated me. She had no idea who was watching. I'd been talking to Jessica on a dating app for 3 weeks. Great conversations, similar interests, and she seemed genuinely interested. We planned dinner at Romano's, an upscale Italian place. I arrived 15 minutes early, got a table, and waited. After an hour with no response to my text, I realized I'd been stood up. The waiter kept asking if I wanted to order, giving me sympathetic look. Other diners were starting to notice the guy sitting alone at a table for 2. Just as I was about to leave, Jessica walked in with another guy. They were laughing, and clearly on a date. She spotted me and her face lit up with amusement. "Oh my god, Derek, you actually waited," she called out loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. "That's so pathetic." Her date, some muscular guy in an expensive suit, looked me up and down. "This is the loser you were telling me about?" Jessica nodded gleefully. I told him I'd meet him here just to see if he'd actually wait around like a puppy. They were making a scene. Other customers were staring, and I could hear whispering about the poor guy who got stood up. "Some guys are just so desperate," Jessica continued loudly. "Like, take a hint." Her date laughed. "Probably his first date in years." I was wearing my best outfit, but compared to this guy's designer everything, I looked underdressed. "We should sit far away," Jessica said theatrically. Secondhand embarrassment is real. They walked past my table, making disgusted faces. Jessica even took a selfie with me in the background, probably for social media. I was humiliated and ready to leave, but before I could stand up, someone approached my table. "Excuse me, are you Derek?" I looked up to see an older gentleman in an expensive suit. "Yes, I'm Tony Romano. I own this restaurant." My heart sank. Great, now I was going to get kicked out for causing trouble. "I couldn't help but overhear what happened," he continued. "And I wanted you to know that behavior was completely unacceptable." Tony's voice was getting louder, and nearby tables were listening. "In 30 years of running this restaurant, I've never seen such cruel, classless behavior from customers." He turned toward Jessica and her date, who were now seated across the room but clearly watching our conversation. "That young woman and her companion are no longer welcome in my establishment. Their behavior violates everything we stand for here." Tony called over his manager. "Please escort those 2 out immediately. They're banned." Jessica's face went from smug to shocked as the manager approached their table. "I'm sorry, but I need to ask you to leave." "What? Why?" Jessica demanded. "Your behavior toward another customer was inappropriate and disruptive. You're no longer welcome here." The entire restaurant was watching now. Jessica tried to argue, but the manager was firm. Her expensive date looked mortified as they were publicly asked to leave. "This is ridiculous," Jessica shouted. "We're paying customers." "No," Tony said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You're bullies who came into my restaurant to humiliate someone for your own entertainment. That's not what we tolerate here." As security escorted them out, Jessica's date was shaking his head and distancing himself from her behavior. Tony turned back to me. "Your dinner tonight is completely on the house, and I'd like you to know that anyone who treats another person like that has no place in civilized society." The restaurant erupted in applause. Other diners were nodding approvingly, and several people came over to express support. "What you experienced tonight says everything about their character and nothing about yours," Tony added. But the story gets better. Jessica's date was apparently some finance guy who cared about his professional reputation. Word spread quickly through their social circles about the restaurant incident. Within a week, Jessica was posting cryptic messages about fake friends and people who can't take a joke. Her social media showed her dining alone at chain restaurants instead of the upscale places she used to frequent. Meanwhile, Tony and I became friends. He introduced me to his daughter Maria, who works as a pediatric nurse and has a completely different perspective on what makes someone attractive. We've been dating for 8 months now, and she's nothing like Jessica. She values kindness, has genuine conversations, and would never dream of humiliating someone for entertainment. Last month, Jessica tried to get back on the dating app where we met. Apparently word had spread through the dating scene about her restaurant stunt, and she was having trouble getting matches. She actually messaged me apologizing and asking for a do-over. I replied with a simple message: "Some people are worth waiting for. You taught me you're not one of them. Sometimes getting stood up is the best thing that can happen to you."